It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague, who was the Scotty to my Kirk, it's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
The problem I have with Neil is that Scotty fixes things and is generally, the man to rely on in a crisis, whereas I'm the man to rely on after crisis to, provide insight and take the piss. So.
True. Very good point. For those who don't know, we were involved in a group message, and that's how we were described today. I was Kirk and he was Scotty. And whether you believe that is to be true, I just knew that meant I was in charge, so I was more than happy to take my lead and forget all the other nonsense. So Dutton, this week, it's nearly the end of the season. We are reaching Championship Sunday. And it's unbelievable. I can't believe we got here this fast, Dutton.
It does seem to have got here a lot quick. It's been it's a short season anyway, the NFL, obviously, as we know, but it just seems that, we were just sat down watching, the opening week of the season, and here we are, there's 3 games left, or 4 if you count the Pro Bowl, 3.
So 3 then. It is one of them things, Dutton. I think it's something that we, it always comes upon you, and you're like, now we'll spend the next 10 months talking about what's going to happen next season.
NFL is become amongst most sports in that there's more time spent not playing it and watching it than there is actually spent watching it and playing it.
So was the in terms of what we're going to do this week, we'll have a quick look back at the games, nothing too amazing, and then we have got 2 spectacular interviews again this week. First of all, as we haven't really spoken about the Eagles for a good, week and a half, because Dutton was getting withdrawal symptoms, and you can't blame him. So what we've got is we've got John Barchard from the Bleeding Green Nation Radio, and he's going to help us talk through NFC East, but mostly Eagles. Then
it is an Eagles podcast.
It is an Eagles podcast. # Eagles podcast. Like, just got to get over that. If you don't like it, go and listen to the other podcasts that do other football teams who are good.
Good luck.
I'm sure they'll love that. Then Dutton, we've got one of our favourites and one of the best people who can talk about the NFL, and that's Andrew Brandt, ESPN business analyst and obviously MMQB columnist. Back-to-back weeks with MMQB, obviously trying to get ourselves in with Sports Illustrated and Peter King.
We do have spells of where we have lots of NFL.com. Then we'll have a few Rotor World. Now we're targeting the MMQB. So,
and obviously with Andrew, we'll talk, the business of football. We'll talk some salary cap stuff. We'll obviously talk about the moves of certain teams, and basically, see what he thinks on CBA stuff and future stuff. He's brilliant, and we're just happy to have him on.
And it's probably quite clear that any take he can offer is going to be better than anything that we can offer on the same topics.
Yeah, that goes without saying. So, before we get to John, I'm interested. They weren't, with the exception obviously of Green Bay Dallas, which couldn't have ended more perfectly for me and you, as Dallas thought they got back in and then someone ripped their heart out. Absolutely fantastic stuff.
And held it up in front of them while it was still beating.
Yeah, although I'm not a big Green Bay fan, you know what I mean? That's a team who's had a bit too much success for my liking. Was there any other takeaways from the weekend that you want to talk about?
Well, briefly, the Seattle Seahawks are probably fast approaching my least favourite team in the NFL, other than the ones I obviously dislike, like the Cowboys, the Giants, yourself, because they're such bad losers, and they're obnoxious in defeat. I'm not saying all the players are, I'm not saying all the fans are, but there are notable players who just seem to go out of their way to make it all about them, and I find it quite distasteful.
Yeah, I'm not a massive. Says someone who's one of the worst losers in Christendom, and myself. I'm not a big fan of this.
Not a very good winner either.
I'm a spectacular winner. Just ask me about it. What I was looking at, Dutton, is there's nothing. It's easy to be like that guy who's like, oh, New England again, but I think we sometimes underestimate the absolute unbelievableness of the run they're on, and the fact that they can win, by how many, by 2 touchdowns, was it, or and it be seen as this like disappointment. That's like the best position to be in ever. And you're at home, and you're against a Steelers team who somehow didn't score a touchdown.
I mean, it's as well to say, the Patriots have had it easy because of the division they play in. Well, then it comes down to the same coach and the same quarterback for this entire run, with the exception of the odd game here, there with the quarterback. How do you keep motivating yourself to come back when you're supposed to win 10, 12 games? That's the thing they've managed to combat every year, that it's never become too easy for the Patriots. It's still, every time they set foot in the field, they still want to make a statement to the NFL and whoever they're playing. I think that's an impressive achievement. Because complacency, because it's not like if you qualify for the Champions League and you get to play against the winners of all. No, that's it. That's the pinnacle.
Yeah.
And to have the hunger that next season you get up and do it again and keep coming for more and more. That says that's. And as I say, I mean, the NFC West, it didn't look that good a division this season, Earl. So, I was
going to say,
you're not playing, by the way.
I'm sure that Earl Thomas's tweet got stuck in drafts from 2013 and he just resent it. But he couldn't have been more wrong, this season. But there you go. And that's back to the sore loser thing. We will get on to Packers against Falcons, or defense need not apply, as we'll probably end up calling it. And then obviously Patriots Steelers, battle of winners basically, later on in the show. But first of all, Dutton, we're gonna talk non-playoff teams now in the NFC East and get John Barchard on the phone. And joining us now on Waxing Lyrical, Mains and Dutch is John Barchard, host of Bleeding Green Nation Radio, part of the Sports Radio 94 family, and I believe a Kenny Stills truther. John, how are we today?
It's true. No, Kenny Stills, hashtag Team Kenny Stills the whole way. Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
John, we'll get straight into it. Obviously, as most people who are listening are aware, I'm a Philadelphia Eagles sufferer. And obviously, at the start of the season, I think most fans probably would have taken a 7-9 season the first year with Doug Peterson. Not more. Did the 3-0 start ruin the whole season for the rest of us?
Of course it did. Yeah, I mean, like the expectations. I don't know if anybody else had any different takes on Carson Wentz or anything. I wasn't a big fan of the move up. I wasn't sure like how this kid was going to develop, but I knew he had to kind of get out there and show his stuff. So once the Sam Bradford trade kind of happened, I was very excited, I guess, because you move on from one thing and you get to see where this kid's at, and then he comes out firing, and then you realize that the Eagles don't have any weapons and they lose Lane Johnson, and everything kind of goes down from hill from there, along with their defense and everything kind of went by the wayside too. So yeah, I think some of those expectations were a little bit skewed, but at the same time, I still think they were kind of better than their record, and that's why this offseason is very important. And to kind of race that 7-9 record, they were still high in DVOA on defense and on offense. So we'll have to wait and see. Like just find something that Carson Wentz can throw and hand off to, and it might be a different story heading into the next season.
I mean, because obviously, I'm just saying, obviously, like the previous season under Chip Kelly, there were games that the Detroit game, the Tampa Bay game, where literally it was painful to watch, just because it's like, oh my god, this is actually a massacre. Throw in the towel, please. Whereas this year, the Eagles seem to be in every game except probably the Cincinnati one. So as you say, there was moments where you thought this actually, even with the lack of talent as a word, this could actually be okay.
Yeah, and we were still talking, wild card there for a little bit because of the way everything kind of shaped out. And honestly, the NFL's been kind of down, and we've seen that through the wild card weekend. And Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger are still there. So it's just kind of how it kind of shapes out. Yeah, and I don't know how much of that is, they're in every single game. Was that just the way the NFL shaped up to be this year, or are they closer, towards that? Again, I think they're closer than they are luckier, and that's why not only the offseason, as we can talk about forever and what's important through there, but just Wentz's ability to step up in the second year. We don't know if Doug Peterson's a good coach yet. We know that he schemes pretty well. He schemes enough to, be the boring Kansas City offense as you saw through the playoffs there and throughout the entire season? Is there going to be some big playability there? Can you use Carson Wentz's arm? All those questions are still kind of unanswered, but again, the draft and the free agency should help with that.
So I guess that's straight onto it. You had two official playoff positions from the NFC East and a half position by Washington, who I support, who did their best choking audition in a long time, losing to the Giants, who actually didn't physically want to win for half the game. I could stop ranting now. So I guess the question is, in terms of draft and free agency, what do you think the Eagles have to do to get back into division contention, so to speak?
It could go a lot of different ways, and honestly, I can't find an argument against any one particular position. If you want to say wide receiver and you're a big Corey Davis fan, absolutely. Maybe Dalvin Cook slides down there. You want to take him. That's great. We were even debating on BGN Radio if a pass rusher is available, somebody like Barnett or the kid from Alabama or something like that. You want to go that route? That's fine too. I think there's just honestly, I really do think it is just one offensive playmaker away from being a playoff contender, and whether or not they actually do or not is kind of up to them. But again, whether it's a running back, whether it's a wide receiver, even a tight end. I know we get into a lot about the Zach Ertz discussion here in Philadelphia. I don't know how you guys feel about him one way or the other, but if he's your only playmaker and he's only making those plays in December, yeesh. Yeah, I don't know. So it's kind of an interesting thing that's going on there. But I also don't think it's much farther away than Dallas or Washington or any of the rest of the teams in the NFC East. I mean, I got to give credit to Washington too. I mean, Scott McGlynn has done a phenomenal job trying to find an offensive line and working out different wide receivers and a lot of that. So I don't think they're that farther away either. I just think that Dan Snyder's going to wreak his little ugly hand back in there and start running things again, which is something that they've avoided for the last 2 years. So hopefully that doesn't happen, at least for you, moving into this offseason.
So, I mean, me and Dutton talk about that a lot. We believe that when Scott McCloughan took over, that he locked Daniel Snyder in a cupboard, and at the moment has not been able to let him out. We thought he may have snuck out when they spent all the money on Josh Norman, but then he managed to lock him back in the cupboard. So I'm hoping, as are most of Washington fans, that he stays away. But then again, you see things like interviewing Rob Ryan, and you think, ooh, maybe Daniel is still in the building.
Yeah, I that's something I can't possibly believe. I was very excited about that they were even heading towards down that. And that actually makes me think, if it's still that kind of mentality where you're like, okay, Rob Ryan's the answer at defensive coordinator after losing one of our own, then yeah, I think there's going to be a possibility. Kirk Coupons, as I like to refer to him, Kirk Cousins, is going to get paid no matter what we try to think or get around that at any point in time. So they're going to be locked in with him. I think they're going to be locked in with Deshaun too. There's been this thing is like, oh, he's coming back to Philadelphia. I think they like each other so much that he's just trying to raise his price. So I really do think that a lot of these different teams, especially Dallas, even though they don't have the money to do it, is kind of like in all-in mode, even though I don't think they're built that way quite yet. So I think the NFC East is going to fluctuate once again this season, fellas.
Going back to what you said about Zach Ertz, it was a few years ago now in this country, there was a soccer team, as it were. Every year they started playing really well from Christmas to the end of the season, but always started poorly. So their fans turned up for the first game of the season in August dressed as Santa to try and trick the players. Maybe that's just what they need to do in the link. Be wearing, get the Santa hat out and try and convince Zach Ertz that it is Christmas already.
Man, that's a great idea. I think we might have to try and steal that and get that going because. Yeah, I mean, it's so odd to me, and a lot of people use the argument, well, this is going to be the first time in his career in back-to-back years that he's going to have the same quarterback and develop chemistry, and I'm not trying to downplay that. That's very important to have. I mean, Jesus, and some of the quarterback talent that he's had to deal with hasn't been that great either. I just think that there was there is definitely some improvement to his game, as you saw when kind of Jimmy Kempski said, hey, maybe you shouldn't Olay Vontaze Burfict, who's chasing after your quarterback no matter what is happening through there, finding that yak, finding a lot of those different things there. Still, I'm not buying into it just yet. I mean, we'll find out in the first couple of months there. He dealt with some freak injuries and things like that too, so I'm sure that factors into it. But I'm not rooting against him, obviously, because we're all fired up the Eagles fans over here. But if that ends up happening, then that takes a lot of worry off of finding that perfect playmaker for this offense. If Zach Ertz can be that guy that you saw in that first game in Cleveland before he went down, was making one-handed grabs and really helping out in the red zone and things like that. So that's a huge question mark going forward. I also don't think they should ignore that in this draft either. If it is a guy like O.J. Howard or some of those guys that kind of slip down, they need playmakers where you can get them. And if the luxury of having two great tight ends, and hopefully one is not a serial killer or anything like that, I can send to jail. But if that doesn't happen, then absolutely. I don't think that Zach Ertz should be like, oh, you already have a tight end and you already have this type of playmaker. You guys, they have to find more of those moving forward here.
I only started watching the NFL and the Eagles around like the year 2000, so I didn't really appreciate it at the time. But were the Thrash, Pinkston, Freddie Mitchell receiving calls, was what the Eagles have now worse than that, or have I just got recency bias?
No, I think that I've tried to be like, no, that's impossible. I mean, we all lived through all those things, but the problem is most of those guys could catch a ball consistently. And I think that's just kind of what you're seeing, and you're getting frustrated in the last 2 years, two different coaching staffs, two different wide receiver coaches too. Unfortunately, the wide receivers hasn't changed that much. When Paul Turner, who's a practice squad guy, is your leading receiver for 2 weeks in a row, that doesn't tell you a lot. When you end up trying to find replacements for Miles Austin, which doesn't sound like a very hard task, and you bring in Ruben Randall and you bring in Chris Givens, and they don't even make the team, and then you're stuck with DGB, who everybody crowned immediately coming out of the draft, and be like, oh yeah, great, the Eagles red zone threat that is always some form of weird narrative that goes on here, hasn't produced anything. Honestly, I don't expect him to be around heading into the season. I think he's going to be a post like training camp or post preseason cut here, because I just don't see that athletic ability. I never see him using his body. His vertical seems like it's 2 inches big. So when I do, we make fun of Pinkston, we make fun of those guys because T.O. came in and was such a superior athlete and such a superior wide receiver. You're like, oh my God, like this is anything we're ever used to before. But if I could equate those guys, like there's at least a Teddy Ginn that Donovan McNabb had to throw to. There was at least a Kenny Britt on that team where they could catch a football for 800 or 900 yards a season, and the Eagles don't have anything close to that right now.
I think that's the thing is we can all laugh at the Thrash, Pinkston, Mitchell, and Dutton, and I tend to in a kind of comedy sense. But I also remember those teams, Dutton, and correct me if I'm wrong. Andy Reid got them to the NFC Championship game every year.
What's the point?
So I think if you're saying you're going to have some kind of Kansas City style offense, then you've got to hope that if they learn to catch, then you get the same results as the early 2000s, I guess, John.
Yeah, I guess that's what you're trying to base that on, and there are some different wrinkles that do look a little different than Andy's or offense, I should say, and I don't know if that's part of that playbook or if it's just limited because of what they had. And I honestly, that was one of the things I argued about Chip Kelly before he left there. It was just that he did it to himself, but that's why the offense got conservative, because you just didn't have guys that can do anything. I mean, like Jordan Matthews isn't a burner, and all those big shots that they were taking early on in the first 3 or 4 games look great because they were catching balls, and then all of a sudden that broke down. The offensive line broke down. There's a lot of different things that they're just like, all right, we just have to get the ball out quick. That's why the yards per attempt and all that stuff goes down, and the air yards, as everybody loves in the draft community, it's just not there anymore. So again, if that can change in some different regard, then I think you'll see some differences there in the air.
If we look at roster for the Eagles next year, there's a decision to make really around Jason Peters. Would you keep him, or would you begin the Lane Johnson at left tackle kind of spot? Even though factoring there's a good chance, he's an idiot and may get suspended for a long time. I was trying to think of a nice way to say it, but I don't think there is.
No, that's actually a lot nicer than things we've called him before during the season. So it's and the crazy thing about Lane Johnson, even though he is like just making dumb things, and he still has a pretty good case, which he's still sued, the NFLPA and the NFL, and I don't know how that's all going to work out. But regardless of that, I don't know. We've talked about that a lot, and I think more or less my argument was always if Jason Peters doesn't allow you to keep Benny Logan, then he needs to go, and then you need to speed up that clock. You just have to deal with what you got to deal with. I don't think 1 year of Jason Peters is going to help your team out completely long term. But again, if Lane doesn't get in trouble, that's at least like 2, maybe 3 wins on the other side of this season, and maybe we have a different outlook on that as well. And you saw the difference in just the running style of Ryan Matthews and all the rest of the guys that were kind of going in through there. So I don't know. I think I would be comfortable with Lane Johnson playing left tackle, and I'm not sure that a guy like Big V is still ready just to be a permanent right tackle yet. I think he's a good swing guy. I think there's a bunch of different things that you can do now that there is kind of, as Jimmy Kempski kind of put out this week, that there's a possibility that Jason Kelsey's going to move on. So now if that's the move there, then I think Jason Peters isn't going anywhere. He's already expressed that he wants to be back, and the Eagles want him back. So, again, I think it's a little bit risky, but at the same time, if you can find the money elsewhere to keep Benny, keep Jason, and just kind of have Lane staying over at his right tackle position for the time being, it's probably what's going to be best for this Eagles team next year.
I mean, there's very little doubt that Howie Roseman can manoeuvre money around. Is probably as good as any football guy or non-football guy, as Chip would call him. But is the state of the roster such, and the state of the finances, without basically taking a massive knife through to the team, is the draft basically going to be the only way to get better, or can the Eagles do something in free agency? But obviously not like to the extent of the dream team or anything like that.
Yeah, I think there are some moves there, like Drake Kirkpatrick, who's going to be a free agent, and had a great career at the Bengals. I think that's an immediate hole you can fill at cornerback. The same thing with, you can kind of. I think you got to go get 2 wide receivers in free agency, regardless of what happens here, and you just got to kind of figure out what happens in the draft. Because as much as we say Corey Davis, or as much as we say D.D. Washington, or some of these other guys that are coming through here, again, historically, in year one, those guys aren't going to make a huge impact unless they're really, really special, which we've gotten used to 2 draft classes before that with like Amari Cooper, and then you had the massive one with Evans and OBJ and all those guys that are kind of mixed in between there. So, definitely. And again, the bar is low. I mean, like by a lot of different metrics, all these CBs were the worst in the league, or near the bottom. So again, that's not hard to replace. And unfortunately, when you look back at things, and even Howie Roseman's move on from Eric Rowe, and I know there's still a lot of debate about how good is he really, and a lot of people are just saying because he's on the Patriots now he's good and whatever, but regardless, he's still better than what's on this football team. So even when you look at those things, you're like, wow, okay, there might not have been a hole there, or who knows? I mean, you're probably going to have to re-sign Nolan Carroll. You're going to have to rely on Jalen Mills and a lot of those different things, but just those simple moves, and that's where you got to fill holes. What people have to realize is you fill holes in free agency, and you develop your core players in through the draft. And you're obviously some of those free agents can end up being and hanging around as being core players, as you see. Malcolm Jenkins and Darren Sproles in the past couple of years. Even Brandon Brooks is probably going to be that as well, and it does happen. But I mean, where they're going to get their best and younger is obviously in the draft, and that's what they have to. I don't want to say nail, but they really need to get youth along the line. This team is still weird because of the way it was assembled so quickly last year, that it's old, it's mediocre, and it's young at the same time. So they need to find young talent on both sides of the ball. And again, like it's strong for their needs. It's strong at running back. It's strong at corner. It's strong at defensive end. And it's pretty strong at wide receiver. So that's a good thing moving forward. And as long as Joe Douglas is doing his homework, I think they're going to be okay here.
So a final question from us, John, before we let you go, and it's a happy one. I mean, obviously, where Washington fans and Eagles fans share a common bond is their hatred of Dallas. And I suppose the question is, could there have been a better way for them to lose on Sunday?
Oh yeah, if the the reckoning that happened in the first half continued, I think that would have been the more enjoyable. If it was like 51-7, if it ended up that way, that would have been fantastic. But yeah, I mean, like a near miss, that game-winning field goal that goes in and hangs just right, and the play before that where everybody's bitching about, oh yeah, they got away with a hold or whatever, and it's just so enjoyable to hear. The refs did it, and then Aaron Rodgers cooked him, and all credit to Olivia Munn, actually, because I think that's who's ultimately we always have to give credit to for a Packers win. Yeah, I love it. And in fact, Field Goals, which is our sister website at SB Nation for Bleeding Green Nation and all that stuff, just put out a great article today about, if you're looking at Dallas, and I know we've mentioned some of that stuff already, but they're in trouble. Like, honestly, everybody's been talking about, this team is going to be so dominant and look out, and Dallas is going to run this division now for a while because of Zeke and Dak, and they've had fantastic years, and I'm with it. But they have so many free agents now coming up with their contracts with no cap space, which even if you move on from Tony Romo, that's still $19 million against the cap that they can't get rid of. You're losing your CB1, Morris Claiborne, who's probably going to be I don't know what they're going to do for him because they can't afford him, but they need him. The problem is he's not great, but they also don't have anybody to replace him either. The same things with some of their offensive linemen, the same things with some of their draft picks. Like, they took a lot of different risk, and I'll even admit that I looked at some of those and I was like, wow, that's a really smart thing to do. And, obviously the famous line around here is like, oh my gosh, they have so many first-round picks. But at the end of the day, all of that cap issue that we've talked about endlessly for the past 2 or 3 years, the extensions of crazy contracts and backloading Tony Romo's thing is finally kind of catching up to him here. So as much as I don't even want to say optimistic because obviously I'm an Eagles fan, but I do think Dak and Zeke are something special, so that'll cover up a lot of those holes. Same time, I don't think they're winning 13 games next year, fellas. I'd be surprised if they end up winning 9 or 10 because it's just how it happens. And if you're trying to convince me that Jason Garrett is a good coach where he's only had 2 winning seasons since he's been there, and he's been 8-8 or under ever since, like these things I think just tend to happen in the NFL, and I really want to see what they do with this, I guess new quarterback, new running back, and all these other different toys that they have to mess with next year. I'm not a big believer in they're going to be a juggernaut forever. They're still going to be a good football team, and it's just going to be on and off, just like the NFC East has been for a long time. I think more or less the Giants have a better option to improve. I think Washington does. I think the Eagles do. I think the Cowboys just kind of are what they are, and that's going to fluctuate for the next couple of years. There'll be some great seasons, there'll be some bad seasons, and then they'll have to make a decision whether or not to fire Jason Garrett or not, again, for like the 3rd time in a row. So, I don't think Dallas is as juggernauty as it's built up to be. I think that's all just ESPN and everybody else here in the States just, pumping them up as they usually do.
I think it's important.
That's a standard thing, isn't it? That everyone everyone hates Dallas, therefore everyone wants to talk about Dallas.
Yeah, pretty much, and ESPN out here knows who pays the bills, so it's kind of that. It is that they are the most bandwagon-y team that is out here, so therefore they get talked about a lot, and they have a ton of fans and things like that. I think they always have the same kind of narrative as, they're definitely a Super Bowl contender this year. It drops down to playoff expectations, and then all of a sudden it ends up the same. And they've won a couple of playoff games and went on a serious run with Romo. But other than that, I mean, it's been the same story for a long time.
Didn't you send that stat the other day, Maines, that in the last 20 years the Jaguars have won more playoff games than the Cowboys?
Yes, yeah, Yep. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like, all right, we understand. but calm down at the same time. It was a good run. But again, a one and done doesn't help anything. It helps your rookie quarterback and your rookie running back. And that's the other thing that nobody's talking about either. I mean, Jesus, 320 plus touches for a rookie running back. You know, your expectations of him pumping out the same thing the next year tends to be not that way, regardless of how old you are. So, I'm curious how the Cowboys kind of handle their offseason because it's a tricky one.
Absolutely. Well, John, thanks a lot for your time, and we hope to speak to you again soon.
Neil, Paul, thanks, guys. We'll be in touch with you.
Well, Dutton, that was a brilliant John Barchard there. Absolutely fantastic and rivaling Matt Money Smith for best radio voice /voice we've ever had on the show.
Oh, there's some serious pipes.
You can't. You're either born with them or you're not. Like me and you aren't.
Well, you talk about Matt Money Smith. He does actually say the reason he got that lovely inflection he's capable was smoking 20 Benson and Hedges a day from the time he was 13.
Yeah, it's gonna.
If that's not if that's not an advert for smoking, I don't know what is.
Exactly. John was excellent and give us a good insight into the Eagles and a little bit into the NFC East, although he slightly disagreed with us, as he would have preferred the Cowboys winning 51, getting battered 51-7, which I suppose would have been good as well.
It would. You get the feeling that there would have been many Cowboys fans in at the end.
Yeah, no, it's good that those 100,000 are still there.
Yeah, they wouldn't have 60 minutes of watching it suffer, of having their heart literally broke in front of them.
Yeah, no, good point. Right, well, less of that and more on let's focus on the games this week, Dutton, and let's talk about them.
The games of the week.
Touchdown, 85 yards! He's going to score! He's going to score! Touchdown!
Dutton, first game on Sunday in the Championship is Falcons at Packers. I suppose the question is, given the way the two offenses are playing at the moment, is it defense need not apply?
This could be those games where I say that one team doesn't lose, they're just out of possessions. On the Falcons this year have averaged 415 yards per game, and the Packers have averaged 368. The major difference is that the Falcons have 371, whereas the Packers have allowed 363. As far as it may seem to anyone who's watched the Falcons since the days of John Abraham, the Falcons probably have a better defense than the Packers at the moment, especially how many cornerbacks the Packers are just losing on a regular basis.
Yeah, I just look and just think this is arena football at its best. You know, this isn't your granddad's football game where it finishes, you know, Navy 10, Notre Dame 7. Do you know what I mean? This is going to be 38-34. It's going to be a massive scoring game, and it will be that. It may not. You may not think the defense is needed, but it will probably be the defense that makes the stop or makes a play that gets you that kind of necessary stop to allow you to win the game. I guess. I was
going to say, Packers in Clay Matthews have got a man who he's tied for the fifth most postseason sacks since 1982. And on the other side, the Falcons have got Dwight Freeney, who's got 10 career postseason sacks, the fourth most among active players. Obviously, these two aren't, the studs they probably were 5-6 years ago, but the game could still come down to something they do.
So last week, when we talked about Green Bay, Dallas, we talked about ball control and what we thought that Dallas needed to do to keep the ball, which was the long drives. Does it almost flip this week and the Packers need more ball control? They ran 5.1 yards a carry last week but didn't run it very often. Do you think they'll try and run it more against not the best rush defense in the Falcons?
Well, the Falcons, they've not been very good against running backs all season. They have surrendered an awful lot of yards on the ground and gave up an awful lot of touchdowns. And you saw the first drive against the Seahawks that it looked like it was going to be Thomas Rawls and a bit more Thomas Rawls. But the speed of which the Falcons can turn a game around with how quickly and how efficient their offense is, you get into the feeling that that game plan might go out the window, and it might just literally have to be, look, we're going to have to match them possession for possession. Don't worry about how you move it, because the Packers started off the season really good against the run, but they've tailed off. We know that Kyle Shanahan likes to keep the running back involved. Devonta Freeman's had 11 carries in every game or won this season. So I don't think that these two teams are going to use their ground game to keep the short, because they're not built defensively to get into scraps. They're built to get into shootouts.
On the Atlanta side of the ball, given the performance of Des Bryant last week, how big could Julio Jones be?
Well, Julio Jones needs to be fit. Now, the problem is, whenever you hear Julio Jones has got some kind of foot injury, you shrug your shoulders and eyes look to heaven, because this man had last feet. He's had problems with his feet coming out since he came out of Alabama, I believe. I think he's onto his 50th screw in one of his feet. He could have a big game. He only played just over half snap against Seahawks, and they still managed to, absolutely tear them to pieces. I just don't think they're going to use him the same way that Des Bryant was used, because Des was a perimeter threat, whereas I think Julio's probably going to try and do most of his work across the middle, because I don't think he's fit enough to get away from anyone at the moment. But potentially, last time these two teams played, he had 11 receptions. This was in 2014. He had 11 receptions, 259 yards and a touchdown. So we know he's got previous against the Pack. He's also he averages 93 yards per game in his 4 career playoff games. So I think they'd take that.
Falcons at Packers, Dutton, over-under is a massive 60. Can be 61 in some venues.
I'm going to take the under, just because I think I just don't think we're going to be that lucky. I don't think we're going to see 35-31. And I think we're bound to be a little bit disappointed by this game. And I'm going to take the Falcons.
I'm doing that Super Bowl challenge, Dutton, the NFL UK one, and I have got every single...
Or the German one.
Or the German one, or the Portuguese one, I think I also got an email from this week. And I haven't got one wrong yet. I've picked the Packers to win the game in that, and I'm going to pick the over, because I don't know how it doesn't get to over, and I don't mean that in a bad... I just don't see how it doesn't. I expect both teams to score a lot of points. I do expect some kind of 38-34 game. I know it's probably going to be 17-10 now, but I'm going to do that and pick the Packers, because they've got one of those can Aaron Rodgers be beat kind of vibes going at the moment, and I don't think he can.
The Falcons are 5-3 in the playoffs in franchise history. Of course, this is going to be the last game at the Georgia Dome,
which I'm sure everyone's going to cry about, because it's such an amazing venue.
Yeah,
says no
pipe
one
it
ever.
in.
Says no one ever. As I said, the most noise in that field is when Goldberg jackhammered Hulk Hogan on Monday Night Nitro.
No one cares.
Well, that's not true. The AFC game, Dutton, Steelers at Patriots. First question really on the Steelers is, can the Steelers convert any of those field goals into touchdowns this week?
Well, it'd be nice. I've watched the game back, and it just looks like Le'Veon Bell is just... NCAA football, there's this very, very realistic mode. You can press a button and it slows the game down. It's called a player vision. So you can see the blocks opening up. The players are coming at you slowly. That's how Le'Veon Bell plays. He plays his life in player vision mode. But when they got to the end of the red zone, it seemed like a little bit... any ideas? No? Oh, okay. Boz can do it for us. I've got no faith that the Steelers are going to turn up, because they never do against the Patriots. So, if it'd be a good day to have Boz in your team, in your DFM, in your playoff challenge. Because I just think the Patriots are better than anyone else at taking away those things that are going to hurt them.
Big return. How big is a return of Dion Lewis to the Patriots offense?
Well, he's a totally different back to what they already have. James White is essentially just a wide receiver in a running back's jersey. LeGarrette Blount is a hammer And Dion Lewis is just... I mean, he went to Pitt, I believe. He was at Pittsburgh.
He was.
He was the backup to LaShawn McCoy. He then was drafted by the Eagles in 2011 to back up LaShawn McCoy. The Eagles then traded him to the Browns for Emmanuel Ocho. Well done. Thank you for that. He's just incredible. He's so shifty. He catches the ball well. He's good on kickoff returns. He's got, special teams. He's a weapon. And there's this theory that they've been saving him up for the playoffs the last few weeks. And now basically everyone else is, more or less at the end of their puff. He's still fighting fresh. So he's huge, especially as, given those little dump offs, that'll help Tom Brady because he did not play well.
He didn't. No, he didn't. He struggled last week, but I think the Dion Lewis thing is big for me. As you said, you've now got 3 running backs. You've got Dion Lewis, does a bit of everything. James White, out the backfield, catching the ball, and LeGarrette Blount, if they choose to use him, can bulldoze his way through, although he may be on the sideline with Le'Veon Bell being Cheech and Chong again. I guess it's for me, I look at it and think the Steelers struggle against the Patriots for some unknown reason they have in recent past. This has got Brady. The Brady revenge tour is 2 games is out now, only a game away from meeting Roger, and then he tries to avoid them as much as possible. So is it just
Why?
me? I have no idea. I'm sure it's nicer in Atlanta this time of year. Is the Patriots win just inevitable this week?
Well, in my opinion, yeah, because I know Pittsburgh Steelers have been playing stupidly well, and their defense has vastly improved. Keith Butler deserves a credit, and James Harden must be a cyborg, but they've never shown they've got the ability to go into Foxborough and win in a regular season. Certainly not going to do it in a playoff game. I mean, they know all about LeGarrette Blount because they cut him loose. I mean, this is LeGarrette Blount who's got 7 rushing TDs in 6 career postseason games and 5 in his last 6 games in general. I mean, the Patriots defense, it's greater than some of its parts because there's no superstars on there. Yeah, Malcolm Butler's good, Devin McCourty's a good safety, but it's not last year's Denver Broncos. And we come down to the road splits, and we know that Ben Roethlisberger is not the same quarterback on the road. And plus, I just think footballing gods are going to punish them for Antonio Brown's dressing room hubris.
That's just a generational thing that he just doesn't get it, does he? I think he's just like, this is a team thing, and this is why, I know they might have to franchise him this year. Is that right, Dutton? But do they question doing that?
He's still
signed. It's Lev Bell, isn't it? Sorry, it's Lev Bell who's the issue. But I just look and think, that doesn't help you get long-term deals with people. But it comes back to that situation of standard diva wide receiver behaviour. We're having a team meeting, I'm in a different room, showing my face on Facebook Live. It's a bit weird.
But are we not surprised? Because it does seem of recent years that the Steelers are actually an organisation that enables its players rather than tries to clamp down. I mean, they let Ben Roethlisberger, come back into the fold with very little remorse. Joey Porter got arrested for assault. He's straight back in. This has, happened. And Mike Tomlin can come out and say all he wants, but it's like, I'm sorry, Mike, this isn't a blip. This is happening all the time now.
Yeah, true. So
and don't forget, as I say, that Lev Bell does have a few suspensions, so it's got to come down somewhere along the line to the coach and the management.
It does, doesn't it? It does. Steelers at Patriots over under is 50.5.
I'm going to take the Patriots, and again, I'm going to take the under. I don't think they'll need to score that many because I can see the Steelers shooting themselves at both feet several times.
I'm also going to take the Patriots in the under. I think it'll be a tight game. Obviously, Steelers are going to want to run the ball as much as humanly possible. Will they be able to do that? I suppose we're about to find out. Don't be surprised, though, as always, that the Patriots have a big game from someone you're not expecting it to be. Will that be Malcolm Floyd or Martellus Bennett? Martellus Bennett. Or someone. That's the kind of game it's going to be. So that you've got based on that, you've got Falcons, Patriots, and I have Packers, Patriots. I know which one. I know which one Fox will be begging for in terms of viewership, and it won't be the Atlanta pick.
Well, when you say Fox, they will be doing the Falcons Packers game. So we'll have Troy and Joe with Aaron and Chris Myers on the sideline. Whereas if you stay up a bit later, you can enjoy the wisdom of kicking specialist Jay Feely on CBS. That man is still living.
Yeah, but
did you hear what one of the ones
him.
he said the other week? Yeah, one of the ones. Did you see what one of his pieces of insight was? They said, "What did he do different then, Jay?" He went, "Didn't miss it."
No.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, that's not good. It's not good. And then we will be preparing ourselves for the Super Bowl, and we'll nearly be there.
If only we were.
If only we were, yeah. Although, yeah, Houston seems quite nice. Done. That's the game. That's the games of the week. But let's focus on the teams of the week.
Mains and Duts. Daily Fantasy Team of the Week.
Show me the money.
So, Dalton, how's your NFL playoff challenge going?
Well, I'm unchanged apart from one again. Tyreek Hill last week, obviously he's gone. Thanks for doing absolutely nothing for me, Reek. I'm banking on Julio Jones being fit, so I've slotted him in. So to jog everyone's memory, my team is obviously still Alan Rodgers. Alan Rodgers? Who's he? Didn't he used to play for Tranmere?
He was a left back for Tranmere.
He's Sam's cousin. Rodgers, Lev Bell, Garrett Blunt, they're all on times 3 bonus. Julio, Julian Edelman. Edelman, who, by the way, in his last 8 playoff games has an average of 8.4 catch and 93 yards. The same as Julio. Martellus Bennett, and I'm sticking with the Patriots defense.
Good call, done. Obviously, I've gone for the DFS option, which I can't stress enough becomes tremendously difficult when you're down to 4 teams, because you obviously can't pick the best players from all the teams because there's a salary cap. So you end up scraping the bottom of the barrel, and it's kind of picking which of the best players you want, I guess, is the best way to describe it. So this is what I've gone with, Dutton. Quarterback is Matt Ryan. He's 7,700. As I said, although I think the Packers are going to win the game, I did think the Falcons would score 34. So Matt should get you a few yards there. Running back 1 is Lev Bell. It's 10,300. Yeah, I did spend that much, but I think the offense revolves around that Bell at the moment, and if they're in the game, he will run for over 100 yards, and he'll probably get a few catches as well. And don't forget, this is PPR. Running back 2 is Dion Lewis. We mentioned him in the Patriots Steelers preview. He's back in the fold. He's back in the game, and he's probably the X factor that might win the Patriots the game. Wide receiver 1 is, we mentioned him in the Falcons Packers game, it's Julio Jones. Dutton does concerns around the injury, but I think he's going to have a massive game this week because he's a matchup nightmare in most times. And as Dutton said, have the Packers got any wide receiver cornerbacks left? I don't know. Wide receiver 2 is Randall Cobb. He's 5,900. Well, I don't really know what you need me to say. He's playing in that game, and Aaron Rodgers is quarterback. I expect him to get a lot of targets, a lot of touches. We'll see how that goes. Wide receiver 3 is Mohamed Sanu. Again, now you're down to, I've got no money left, 4,500. He's playing in the shootout. 4 or 5 catches the last couple of weeks. If that continues, you're going to get yourself those 10, 11 points that might push you over the edge. Tight end is a massive stretch in Austin Hooper, playing for the Falcons. He was good at the start of the season. He struggled recently with injury, but he's back on the field, and I'm hoping that he gets in the end zone. Flex is Martellus Bennett. As I said when we talked about the Patriots game, 3,300. He is one of those players that's boom or bust, but it'll just be like the Patriots to get thrown the ball 8 or 9 times and he'll catch it 7 for 120. That's just random how the Patriots operate. You don't know from 1 week to the next who's gonna get all the yards. And the defense is the Steelers. I went for the Patriots were 4,000, couldn't afford them. Steelers are 2,300. Don't expect the Patriots to put up a ton of points. And as Dutton said, when you've got a cyborg in James Harrison, you never know. There might be a strip sack fumble. You never know.
Wouldn't put it past him.
You wouldn't put it past them. So, team of the week for me: Matt Ryan, Lev Bell, Dion Lewis, Randall Cobb, Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu, Austin Hooper, Martellus Bennett, and the Steelers defense. As you can tell, Dutton, I didn't really mention how I did last week because I was pretty crap. Got battered by most people in the head-to-heads that I was in. One of those things. One good week, one bad week in the playoffs. Let's see if I can get back in the win column this week.
If you can't take a bloody nose, stay and hide under your bed.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. Absolutely. Well, Dutton, 2 interviews this week. We've already had John Barchard, and now we're going to talk to the brilliant Andrew Brandt, ESPN Business Insider and writer for MMQB. He's going to talk us through all things business, finance, and front office. And joining us now on Wax and Lyrical Mains and Duts, it's the brilliant Andrew Brandt, ESPN business analyst, MMQB columnist, and host of the Business Sports podcast. Andrew, how are we today?
I'm doing well, guys. Always good to be on with you guys.
So if we get straight onto it, Andrew, with the NFL, you mentioned in the past about NFL postseason salaries and how they are, well, not really worth the paper they're written on. There's hardly any money for the teams, but I mean, money me and Neil would happily take. Is this where teams truly find out which of their players want to win and which are more interested in the dollars?
Yeah, as I pointed out before, I think the pay for the most important games of the year is a fraction of what the players make for the less important games of the year. And again, to summarize for listeners who don't know, it's all paid by the league. The contract size doesn't matter. Players are all getting the same amount. If a Brock Osweiler or a Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers makes $20 million during the season, each of them is making like $25,000 for these big playoff games, which is really counterintuitive, but that's the way it happens. I just think this is one of those hidden benefits that owners have, and we've seen it where this is part of the CBA, collective bargaining agreement. It's in there how much players make every year. It goes up a little bit every year. And the owners sort of get away with it. No one really questions it, including the union, which allows it to be negotiated in every year.
Obviously, Andrew, you mentioned the CBA. We're halfway through this current agreement. Do you think there's something like this? Maybe the NFLPA has already got plans in place for things that they know they're probably never going to get any push. They're never going to meet the NFL halfway with, so they might be prepared to give it away in exchange for something else. Or will that only be decided much closer to the actual negotiations?
Yeah, it's a great question to see where the NFLPA puts its emphasis priorities in the next CBA. I mean, again, like you said, we're only halfway through, so there may be scattered negotiations in the next couple of years, but really, if I'm the NFL, I like the deal. I'm just sitting there waiting, and if they want to come to me with something, sure, we'll listen. Where are they going to put their energy? Are they going to put their energy behind this franchise tag? I don't think so. Are they going to put it behind commissioner power based on the Brady case? Perhaps. But to the NFL owners, and I would say this too, it's about the money. Get the money. Those other things, the commissioner power is affecting 5-10 players a year. Franchise tag doesn't affect that many. I would try to get more money. I mean, it's complicated, but I think these minimum spending thresholds are not enough, especially compared to other sports. That would also bring more guaranteed contracts if they had more guaranteed money collectively through a bigger spending requirement. So that's where I would go if I were, advising them on where to put their priority.
So, Andrew, over the past few off seasons, they've all produced players who eventually have signed contracts that ended up moving the needle on the market for their position. The free agency class this year isn't that high. So is there a chance that there's a calm year? We may see some teams reevaluate their approach to free agency and cap management.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of cap room. The question is, what will they spend it on? Because as you noted, even in the best years, the free agency class is not the best, and part of that is the franchise tag. You know, last year you had an Eric Berry, you had a Von Miller, you had a Tremaine Johnson, you had a Kirk Cousins, all of whom were taken off the market with this tag, which really restricts not only their contracts, but all contracts at their positions. You had some what I call golden ticket winners last year, whether it was Malik Jackson or Janoris Jenkins or Olivier Vernon, but they were, like you said, they're only a handful. And I even think last year, and I think we're going to see more of this, at least half the league basically sat out. And they watched the Giants and the Jaguars and a few other teams get busy with free agency. But, wow, I mean, by the third day of free agency, everyone was looking at one-year deals. I mean, it's really a limited market, 15 to 20 guys, it seems like, every year. And I haven't even looked at the list, but you're telling me what others are, that it's not a great list this year. And again, you're going to have the Kirk Cousins of the world probably taken off the market. It's going to leave even more limited pool.
So you mentioned Kirk Cousins, Andrew. Do you know? I'm a Washington fan, and it's constant. I listen to a lot of radio from Washington, and it's constant at the moment on Kirk Cousins. I mean, I know Washington are out, and I'm sure people are. There's 4 people in Washington who are interested in the Wizards, but it seems like everybody on radio wants to talk about the Redskins. Do you see that deal getting done? Or do you think that Scott McCloughan will think again, I'm still not 100% sure, let's franchise him? And if they do franchise him, surely Kirk will walk after this season?
Yeah, I mean, first I'm a Washingtonian, born and raised there, big Redskin fan growing up, kind of lost that over the years of working for other teams, etc. And actually going on a radio show after this to talk about Kirk Cousins in Washington. So anyway, I think it's natural. That's a galvanizing force in that city to talk about it. He's the quarterback. He gets all the attention. So what's going to happen? Well, his agents wanted to negotiate off a $20 million level last year, which is the tag. The Redskins wanted to negotiate in the 16 range. Didn't get done. Now the tag will be $24 million. Will the agents say we got to negotiate at that level, which would put him right up there with an Andrew Luck, even Rodgers and Stafford and others? And I would think the Redskins do not want to negotiate at that level. So they have 2 choices. They can franchise tag him or let him go to the market. Or they can say, hey, Kirk, this is what we're willing to do. Take it. Or we'll do another 1-year rental, even at a high number, and then put off the problem till 2018, when the franchise tag would be extremely exorbitant, and they really have to make a decision. But it's the continuing power of the tag that even though it seems like Kirk Cousins has all this leverage, he really doesn't.
Moving on to one of the bigger issues, obviously we've heard you speak about this on the Ross Tucker podcast and on your own with John Spanos of the Chargers, and that's the Chargers now are the Los Angeles Chargers and not the San Diego. Given that the home fans, the Chargers fans, are obviously upset about this, and there's been positive apathy from the good people of LA regarding this team. Do you think this might be putting the NFL off relocations in the future, or, as you said yourself, does the fan opinion not count that high?
Yeah, and I've gotten a reaction to that. I'm basically saying they're not part of the equation. When I say they don't matter, of course the teams and the league will say they matter. They need them. And to some extent, of course, they matter. But my point is, we mentioned the CBA. Well, the CBA is between the players and the owners. all these coaches complaining they don't have enough time with the players in the off season. Well, that was negotiated. Coaches were not part of that negotiation. They were not part of it. So when San Diego City, County, State negotiates with the Chargers, there's no fan voice at the table. I mean, there's no fan representation. When the Raiders negotiate with Oakland, when the Rams negotiate with St. Louis, no one's talking about the fans. So it really is interesting. Everyone talks about the fans, but they're never part of these negotiations. They don't bring a financial interest. And we can talk about what it means if, LA has empty seats. It doesn't mean what it used to mean, as I called it, your father's NFL, where the ticket sales really mattered. Now it's broadcast revenue, it's sponsors, it's suite sales. All those things are ahead of ticket revenue.
It is one of those things that it's just something I've just noticed in the last couple of years. Obviously, I'm an Eagles fan, but when I'm talking about the Eagles, I don't call them we. I've just gone into the habit of calling them they. I don't know whether that's just a subconscious thing that maybe one day they will leave Philadelphia and I won't be part of it, or maybe it's just I'm just trying to be pretentious.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that fans are getting used to the business of the NFL, partly because they have people like me talking about it a lot, partly because they just see, as you say, what is happening now where it is more business. It is, you sort of see these owners as worried about their bottom lines more than anything else, especially with these moves. You bring up the moves. We may have 3 if the Raiders go to Vegas, and again, they won't move in this year. Neither of these teams will, but 3 after 20 years of no one moving, it'll be a seismic event to happen this year.
The difference is, I suppose, if from the chart, and this is limited knowledge, Andrew, I apologize, but my understanding is the Raiders and the Chargers, they are rich, obviously, extraordinarily rich compared to most people, but not at the tremendously rich, Jerry
right.
Jones, Daniel Snyder, and so are they moving to just try and get extra millions of dollars for themselves?
I think that's one way to look at it. The other way is, Stan Kroenke of the Rams is worth $11 billion. He's basically building a stadium that now is going to host the Rams and Chargers with his own money. Now, Spanos in San Diego, Davis in Oakland, they feasibly can't do that. I mean, even if they wanted to, they can't. They don't have that money. So they've been relying on trying to get the city, the state, the county work with them, and trying to get public subsidies out of California it's impossible. So the Chargers and Spanos family will tell you they've been trying for 16 years, and John Spanos told me that on the podcast, but it's not happening. So what do? They try every which way, get more money out of the league, maybe get more money out of Kroenke to keep him out of L.A. That wasn't working. So they took their only option, which was L.A. The tough thing talking to the Spanos family, I really think they did not want to move. It became a financial reality.
This season, in the off season, Andrew, there's been a few instances of teams refusing to allow other teams to talk to their coaches, and my favourite example at the moment is it looks like Mike Vrabel and Romeo Crennel are going to get new jobs in Houston, but kind of do exactly the same job. They're just going to get moved up to avoid Mike Vrabel being allowed to interview for defensive coordinators jobs. In situations like this, from your experience, would the team let their coach know they had been an approach and canvass them to see where they stand, or would Houston have just flat out refused for Mike Vrabel to speak to anyone and then kind of promoted him on the backside?
Yeah, this is more in the coaching area, which I haven't been involved in, but it just seems to me there are all these games being played now in order to retain. And again, we're back to the major topic we always talk about, which is follow the money. I just think a lot of these situations, these coaches decide to stay because if there's been a financial arrangement. And I don't know for sure if that happens, say, with New England and Josh McDaniels or Vrabel, but it just seems like all of a sudden you hear they're hot, and then all of a sudden you hear they're staying, and you know something's happened. I don't think it is as altruistic as, oh, yeah, I decided I really don't want to go there. I think something happens financially. And the title part of it has never been fully understood by me or anyone else in terms of you can block based on titles. I think they need to clean that up.
Last question, Andrew. Obviously, we're very, very grateful for your time, as always.
Sure.
There's been whispers of another developmental league starting up. Now, obviously, news like this is as common as new dawns for the Bills and about as likely to happen. But it does seem there's a few prominent people behind this one, notably Tom Brady's agent. Does it have a chance from what you know about it?
Yeah, I appreciate you leading me into the next guest for my podcast. It's Don Yee, Tom Brady's agent, talking about this Pacific Pro Football League. In a nutshell, all these leagues in the past have competed with the NFL. This one aims not to. This one tries to be a feeder league for the NFL and is really competing with college football, 18 to 21-year-olds. And the feeling is that college football, as we know it, is a 7-on-7 game, very wide open, and not suitable to prepare people exactly for pro football, whereas this league would. In terms of who the talent base would be, I just think it's going to be hard to get sort of the top 100 recruits that go to an Alabama or a USC or a Stanford or Ohio State, but I think they will be able to get that player that can't qualify academically, that player that can't quite make it at the top level of schools and would rather do this than play for maybe even a mid-major school. It's got a chance. And, we'll just have to see. Everything's about money. If they want to pay $50,000 average, which is certainly enough to attract good players at that age, again, I don't think they're going to be attracting pick a name, the Jameis Winstons of the world and the Marcus Mariotas, but they are going to be able to attract good players who would otherwise be playing college football.
Well, Andrew, as always, we really appreciate your time. We know how busy you are. Enjoy your call with Washington and see if you can pull them off the ledge in terms of money. And I would be stunned if they don't ask, is Kyle Shanahan going to offer 2 1s when he gets to San Francisco for Kirk?
I'll put it in there. Thanks, guys. Always enjoy it with you guys.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right, Chip.
That was a brilliant Andrew Brandt there, doesn't it? Just every single time he comes on the show makes us smarter.
Absolutely. The questions we all asked, obviously they were hinting at the business element. That's why we get someone like, but most of them, literally, you could just break them down. Yes.
Yeah, it's all follow that money and you will get there, Dutton. So Dutton, big week this week, championships. Everyone get ready. Watch it where you can. Enjoy it. Listen to it on the radio. Watch it on Sky. Watch it on Game Pass. Make sure you watch it because these are the 2 biggest games of the season so far.
Absolutely. And as I say, there's only 3 left. And after these have gone, how many Super Bowls seriously have there been? This is your best chance to watch a classic season. And then it's 9 months in the dark.
It is. That's it, Dutton. End of the show. Thanks for listening.